Welcome to our deep dive into the mind of David Goggins. We've got excerpts from his autobiography, Can't Hurt Me, and I gotta say, this guy's story, it's not your typical success story.
It really isn't.
It feels more like, I don't know, a masterclass in resilience.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. Goggins takes us from a childhood filled with, well, trauma to becoming this incredible athlete and motivational figure. What gets me is how he uses that early hardship to propel himself forward.
Okay, so let's start with that childhood. Goggins doesn't hold back. He calls his early years hell, and after reading those excerpts, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
He grew up in this family-run skating rink, Skateland. Sounds kind of idyllic on the surface,
Yeah,
right?
you picture like disco lights, music, family fun.
Exactly, like something out of a movie. But behind the scenes, it was a nightmare.
Oh, absolutely. It's like this facade of fun, family entertainment, but masking this really abusive environment.
He calls his father, the rink's owner, the devil, and talks about the fear and violence that was just like constant in their lives.
It's chilling reading those accounts.
There's this one incident that really stuck with me. Goggins describes his father drunk, holding a gun on him when he was 8 years old. 8 years old. It makes you wonder, how does a kid even begin to process that kind of trauma?
Right. It raises some really big questions about resilience. I mean, for most people, that kind of experience would be devastating, could lead to a lifetime of struggles. But for Goggins, it somehow becomes this, I don't know, this crucible.
Forging that mental toughness he's known for.
Exactly.
It makes you think about just how adaptable the human mind can be.
For sure.
It's like a twisted origin story, for a superhero, but this is real life.
Yep.
And while obviously no one should have to go through something like that, it does make you think about the power of our minds to, not only adapt, but potentially even, I don't know, use hardship to our advantage.
It makes you wonder, what are the limits of human resilience? How much can we endure before we break? And what are the things that might help us not only survive, but actually thrive after experiencing that kind of hardship?
So thankfully, Goggins and his mom and brother, they eventually escape. They end up in Indianapolis, and he goes to Cathedral High School. He mentions being good at basketball but struggling in school. It seems like he was trying to find some normalcy, maybe a place to fit in.
Yeah, definitely. This is Goggins searching for some sense of identity and self-worth.
Yeah.
Athletics, basketball offered him a path, a sense of belonging. He was good at it, and it gave him some confidence. But it was still a fragile foundation.
Still carrying the weight of his past.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like he hits this turning point when he goes back to Brazil, his father's home country, and he bombs some basketball tryouts. He talks about standing in front of this bathroom mirror, just ripping himself apart, dissecting all his flaws. It's like this intense internal confrontation.
And that's where the accountability mirror comes in. He shaves his head, stares himself down in the mirror, and starts writing all his insecurities, his goals, right there on the surface.
Wow.
Such a powerful image, turning self-doubt and aspirations into something tangible.
Like a declaration of war on his own weaknesses.
Yeah.
And you said this becomes like a recurring ritual for him, this confronting his reflection, holding himself accountable. I mean, do you think we could all benefit from something like that, even if it's not, as dramatic as writing on our mirrors?
Oh, absolutely. The key takeaway isn't really about the mirror itself. It's the idea behind it. It's embracing this radical honesty, acknowledging our weaknesses not as something to be ashamed of, but as a starting point. What if instead of ignoring our flaws, we, confronted them head on, used them as fuel?
For Goggins, this shift in mindset, it's like a catalyst. He buckles down, gets his grades up, and then almost out of nowhere, he gets this crazy idea to become a Navy SEAL.
Which, let's face it, seemed pretty far-fetched.
Yeah, he was overweight, had already washed out of pararescue training.
Oh, right.
Why did he leave that, by the way?
He was worried about complications from sickle cell trait. Thought the intense training could trigger something. He uses that as his reason for quitting, but he later admits that it was mostly fear holding him back.
So picture this. He's working as an exterminator, feeling completely lost, and then he sees this TV show about Navy SEALs.
And boom, he's hooked.
It's like something clicks.
That timing was crucial. The SEALs become his new obsession. They represent this discipline, mental toughness, exceeding limits, all the things he's craving, like a new North Star.
But he gets rejected by recruiters because of his weight. That's going to be a huge blow after setting his sights so high.
He doesn't give up, though. He eventually finds a recruiter, Stephen Sheljo, who sees his potential, helps him lose the weight, pass the ISVAB, But even then, he's got a long way to go.
And that's where the roach incident comes in, right? This seemingly small thing that reignites his commitment.
It's exactly. He's on a job, spraying for roaches, and as he's cleaning up the dead bugs, it hits him. He's become complacent, like he's just letting life happen to him. And those roaches, scattering from the poison, they become this metaphor. They're fighting for survival. And he's not even fighting for his own dreams.
He finds motivation in the most random places. It's like those roaches jolt him awake, remind him what's at stake.
So he goes from exterminating bugs to facing one of the most grueling experiences imaginable, Hell Week in BDDS training. This is where his mental toughness gets put to the ultimate test. Sleep deprivation, extreme challenge, the constant threat of failure. It's designed to break people, and he's doing it all while battling these demons from his past.
So we left off with Goggins entering Hell Week, the ultimate test of will, designed to weed out anyone who's not 100% committed to becoming a SEAL.
It sounds absolutely brutal.
Did he talk about what kept him going through that?
It's incredible. He talks about the camaraderie, the competition, just the intensity of it all. But what's really fascinating is how he learns to use pain as fuel. To, compartmentalize, visualize success. He develops this analogy of a cookie jar, right? Where he stores all his past experiences of overcoming adversity.
I like that.
So whenever he's about to break, he reaches into this cookie jar, pulls strength from those memories.
Makes you wonder, what would our own cookie jars look like? What experiences do we have that we can draw strength from when things get tough?
Right.
And it doesn't have to be like Hell Week. It could be that presentation you nailed even though you were terrified.
Exactly.
Or finishing that marathon you thought you couldn't.
That's such a good point. We all have those cookie jars, those moments of resilience, even if we haven't gone through something as intense as Goggins.
Yeah.
And I think that's a key takeaway here. We can learn to reframe how we think about pain, about discomfort.
Instead of avoiding it.
It's not about seeking suffering, for the sake of it, but recognizing that pushing beyond our comfort zones, that's where growth happens.
Goggins needed every ounce of that mental strength because, get this, he actually goes through Hell Week twice. He gets pulled out the first time with double pneumonia, coughing up his lungs, but still trying to stay in the fight.
It's unbelievable.
Defies doctor's orders, begs to be let back in.
They make him start over, though.
Day one.
With a new class.
Wow.
Talk about starting from zero.
And even in his second attempt, he's not exactly in top shape. Multiple stress fractures in his legs, running on taped-up shins.
The instructors wouldn't let him quit.
It's like he's punishing his body, but there's also this incredible mental fortitude shining through.
He's definitely pushing himself to the absolute limit.
He even mentions this moment during drown-proofing, which is basically like controlled drowning, right?
Yeah.
And he thinks to himself, I wish it were colder.
Wow.
Like he's seeking out more discomfort, intentionally callousing his mind.
It almost seems masochistic.
But there's a method to his madness.
Yeah.
He's proving to himself he can endure anything. So he conquers Hell Week, becomes a SEAL, achieves this incredible goal. But that's not the end, is it? This is just the beginning of his journey of pushing limit.
This is where his philosophy really starts to form. He moves beyond just the physical tests and starts exploring what the human mind is capable of. Ultramarathons, setting these crazy goals, like running 100 miles with no training.
100 miles?
Yeah.
That's insane. What would possess someone to do that?
For Goggins, it was purpose. He ran that first 100-miler, the San Diego one day, to honor fallen SEALs. It wasn't just personal, it was about something bigger.
Okay, that makes sense. But even with a strong why, 100 miles with no training? That's got to be excruciating.
Oh, it was.
Did he talk about, like, the toll it took on him?
He describes, like, excruciating pain, his feet shredded, pushing through dehydration, exhaustion. But he keeps drawing on that cookie jar, right? Pulling from those past experiences, overcoming adversity. It's like he trained his mind to see pain as a signal to dig deeper, not to give up.
It's amazing how he turns suffering into motivation.
I know, right?
And then, after collapsing at the finish line, he refuses medical help.
He wanted to feel the full impact, the physical and mental consequences.
Intense.
Really highlights his commitment to pushing through discomfort, embracing the struggle.
That race kind of sets the stage for his ultra running career. He starts taking on these more extreme events, like the Hurt 100 in Hawaii, with crazy elevation changes and rough terrain, always raising the bar, never satisfied.
And he approaches those challenges with that same discipline, strategic thinking he learned in SEAL training. Meticulous preparation, studying the terrain, visualizing success, developing strategies for overcoming obstacles. He even incorporates military-style training, like ruck runs with heavy weights.
He's like translating that mental toughness of SEAL training into a blueprint for conquering anything. And this is where he introduces his 40% rule, right?
Okay.
The idea that we're only tapping into 40% of our potential.
A pretty bold statement.
It is. But it speaks to his belief that we're all capable of way more than we think.
Yeah.
He's saying we're limited by our own barriers, fear, doubt, comfort zones. But what if we could break through those barriers? What if we could access that other 60%?
That's the million-dollar question.
So how do we do that? How do we break free from those self-imposed limitations?
Goggins is all about callousing the mind, right? Intentionally seeking discomfort, pushing past those limits we set for ourselves.
You can make it simple.
Like when he was training for the Badwater 135, one of the toughest ultramarathons in the world.
Oh, yeah.
He would run in the hottest part of the day, intentionally dehydrating himself to simulate race conditions.
Intentionally dehydrating himself.
Sounds crazy, right? But there's a logic to it. He's creating hardship to build resilience, to expand his capacity for suffering, training his mind to overcome any obstacle.
So he's not just enduring pain, he's weaponizing it.
Exactly.
Forging this unbreakable spirit. But how does this apply to everyday life? I mean, most of us aren't training for ultramarathons in Death Valley.
That's the beauty of it. It's not about the specific activity, it's about the mindset. We can apply that to anything. What are our own hell weeks? What are those beliefs that hold us back? Maybe it's the fear of public speaking, the procrastination that keeps us from finishing that project, or the self-doubt that stops us from pursuing a dream.
It's about identifying where we're holding ourselves back and pushing past our comfort zones.
Right. Don't let your mind be the thing that stops you.
And he offers some practical tips for doing that.
Yeah, like compartmentalizing, right?
Yeah.
Breaking down big goals into smaller, more manageable steps. Scheduling suffering into your day. Intentionally seeking discomfort to build mental toughness.
He even suggests analyzing our schedules, finding where we're wasting time, energy, and redirecting those resources.
Being more deliberate with our time and energy.
So even though he's this intense, driven guy, he's not just about brute force. He's strategic, calculated.
Oh, yeah.
Uses his mind as the most powerful weapon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he's always seeking new challenges, new ways to test himself. He even tries out for Delta Force selection.
Delta Force.
Like the elite of the elite.
Wow. I'm guessing that pushed him to the limit, physically and mentally.
It did. He talks about navigating a complex power grid using just a map and compass, racing against the clock, carrying all those expectations, a test of mental agility, strategy, and performing under pressure.
So did he make it? Did he become a Delta Force operator?
He doesn't make the final cut, but he doesn't see it as a failure. He takes valuable lessons from the experience.
That's interesting. You'd think someone as driven as him would be crushed.
He could have easily blamed external factors, but he owns his shortcomings, recognizes that he didn't prepare enough, that his ego got in the way. Another example of that radical responsibility.
So even Goggins, with all his mental toughness, discipline, he still experiences setbacks. But it's how he responds that defines him. He doesn't let them derail him.
Uses them as fuel.
To learn and grow.
Exactly. And he challenges us to adopt that mindset too. Don't let your past define you. Don't let achievements limit you. Always keep pushing forward, seeking new challenges. He embodies that idea of continuous growth.
It's inspiring, but it also makes me wonder, does he ever slow down, ever take a break from pushing himself to the extreme?
Well, life has a way of forcing us to slow down sometimes, and Goggins is no exception. He talks about some serious health challenges he's faced, a congenital heart defect, multiple surgeries. He's even diagnosed with atrial septal defect. At one point, a hole in his heart.
A hole in his heart, and he was still doing all this crazy stuff.
It's a testament to his willpower, resilience, but also a reminder that he's human, vulnerable. And yet, he doesn't let it define him. He uses it as fuel to keep pushing forward.
It's like he has this inner fire that just won't go out.
He talks about waking up every day like he's back in BUDS, day one, ready to tackle whatever comes his way, that day one mentality.
Powerful concept. Not letting your past successes or failures dictate how you approach each day. Waking up with purpose, intensity, ready for whatever challenges come your way.
Finding our own version of that day one mentality, that drive to push ourselves, embrace discomfort, and live a life that truly matters.
We've covered a lot: his 40% rule, Delta Force selection, the physical challenges, the health battles. But I'm curious to explore the more personal side of his story. Did those excerpts touch on his relationships, his journey of self-discovery outside of those extreme challenges?
Yeah, definitely. There's a deeper layer there. Goggins talks about his relationship with his brother, Tronis Jr., It's complicated, especially given what they went through as kids.
It makes sense, right? I mean, Trina stayed with their father while Goggins and his mom escaped. That's gotta feel like a huge betrayal.
Oh, absolutely. That kind of trauma can really fracture relationships. And for years, there was silence between them.
Hmm.
But then, Goggins gets a call from his brother. Junus's had turned his life around, earned a PhD, moved away from their dad. He wanted to reconnect.
Wow. It's amazing that Goggins was even open to that.
Yeah.
Must have taken a lot of, introspection, courage to even consider it.
It shows a different side of him, one that emphasizes forgiveness, letting go of that resentment. He realizes holding on to anger was hurting him, not his brother.
It's a powerful lesson in growth and maturity. Makes you think, how often do we let those past hurts control our relationships?
Right. What would it look like to embrace forgiveness even when it's hard?
It's not about condoning past actions, but recognizing that holding on to anger, it just keeps us stuck.
Yeah. Goggins' willingness to reconcile with his brother, it speaks volumes.
This reconciliation seems to happen around the same time he shifts from this intense self-focused journey to a more outward-facing role, like as a motivational speaker.
Right.
Did you see that in the excerpts?
Definitely. He takes that raw, unfiltered approach he used on himself and turns it outward, shares his story to inspire others.
Interesting.
What's interesting is that he doesn't shy away from the darkness, you know. He uses it to connect with people who are struggling, who feel trapped.
He's not pretending to be perfect.
Yeah.
He's saying, hey, I've been through hell, I've messed up, but I figured out how to overcome it, and so can you.
It's that authenticity that resonates with people. He's not preaching, he's in the trenches with them. He's not promising a quick fix, but challenging them to face their own 40%, embrace the discomfort of growth.
And it sounds like he's genuinely passionate about helping others. It's not about the fame or money. It's about using his experiences to empower people.
Exactly. He challenges how we think about success. It's not about hitting some external marker. It's about that continuous process of pushing yourself, living a life that's true to who you are.
So after this deep dive into David Goggins' world, what's the biggest takeaway you want listeners to walk away with?
I think it's that we're all capable of so much more than we think. Goggins isn't superhuman. He's a testament to the power of the human mind. Self-discipline, mental toughness. It's about recognizing that we're not defined by our past, our failures, or even our successes. We have the power to choose how we respond to challenges, use those experiences to move forward.
It's about embracing the struggle, pushing past those limits we set for ourselves, and discovering what we're truly capable of, waking up each day with that day one mentality, ready to take on the world.
And remember, it's not about copying Goggins' extreme lifestyle. It's about finding our own version of that intensity, that commitment to growth. What are your hell weeks? What challenges make you want to quit? How can you apply his principles to your life?
That's a powerful question to consider. What would your life look like if you approached each day with that purpose, that willingness to push beyond your comfort zone?
Goggins' story is a testament to that unbreakable spirit inside all of us. He challenges us to tap into that, unleash our potential, and create a life that's both meaningful and extraordinary.
And if you want to dive deeper into his philosophy, into the nitty-gritty of how he does it, his book, Can't Hurt Me, lays it all out. It's not an easy read, but it might change your perspective on what's possible.
And remember, as Goggins would say, it's on you. You have the power. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.